Stand by for a quick video. Welcome back to another episode of the Strongman Winner Circle podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Camby. This is episode 52 with none other than Evan Singleton. Evan has amassed 3 international wins throughout his career. He's going for his 4th appearance at World's Strongest Man. And will 2023 be the year of the T-Rex? Tune in to find out as we talk all things strongman, training, and life on today's episode. And we're live. Hello, Evan. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much for having me. I like that little intro video. Did you make that yourself?
I sure did.
That was very well done. I like that.
I think it's a good way to gets a little bit hyped up, but also I think it will grab some of those listeners that sometimes tune in the first 30 seconds and then bail. I think that's the main reason. But what I was thinking, Evan, it's pretty crazy that you're already onto your 4th World's Strongest Man. Did you know that the 4th appearance at World's Strongest Man is actually a very significant appearance for many athletes?
I did not. Why is that?
So there are lots of individuals that won their World's Strongest Man on their 4th try. So the first one, for example, myself at the 105 kilo level, I won my World's Strongest Man on my 4th try, but also Martins, he got 6th, 4th, 1st.
Interesting.
You have Tom Stoltman, and you also have Brian Shaw, all won on their 4th trip.
I did not know that.
Well, I'm here to educate. Other champions. So Big Z, even though there was like the IFSA split, he won on his 5th appearance. Eddie Hall won his 6th appearance, and then Haffer Bjornsson won on his 9th appearance at World's Strongest Man. So,
fair enough.
So a little history there. But since November, you kind of been a little bit on a war path to kind of prove that you're the strongest, that you'll be the strongest in the world come World's Strongest Man time. Of course, a half of a year worth of training leading up to the big show. What's the kind of the biggest challenges of this prep, especially kind of 6 months leading into one show?
Well, the first thing that I wanted to work on for World's Strongest Man is my mental approach, because I feel like I wasn't able to, like, everybody knows me as like the super aggressive lifter, the super hyped up lifter, and that's totally fine and everything like that. But I've always had a problem at World's Strongest Man because it's such a long and stretched out show that it would actually, I wouldn't have the ability to really turn it off. So it would just drain energy from me all day. And by like the 2nd or maybe 3rd day, I would just be completely fried. And one thing I've been doing is I've been working with a sports psychologist, like pretty much a mental coach, giving me different things that I can do as far as like meditation, visualization, just like the tiniest little things just to help maybe even just change my mood. Like one of the things that I've been working on is I'm very, very big into music. Like I'm listening to music constantly throughout the day, and I have an emotional response to the music that I'm listening to. That's why when I'm in the gym, all my music is super angry, it's aggressive, it's intense. That's because that's how I train. Outside of the gym, everything that I listen to is very mellow. It's very upbeat. It's positive and happy music. So I like to keep that train going into World's Strongest Man. One of the things that I've been working with Ken, the sports psychologist, is in between events, I'm listening to music like oldies and disco and stuff like that. Very upbeat, happy music that helps bring my adrenaline down. It helps slow my heart rate. It just puts me in like a good mood. And then once I'm ready to turn it on, that's when the metal comes back on. So just tiny little changes to my game like that. In training, it's shown significant changes, and it's definitely worked out for the better. So I'm looking forward to bringing that. And then the overall mindset, I would say, going into World's Strongest Man, like you said, man, ever since like November when I've come back from injury, I've just been on a war path, man. I've been training with a chip on my shoulder, if I'm totally honest. Like I've been getting the heat of it from fans, maybe some other competitors or commentators and everything. And I just almost feel like I'm left out of the discussion when it comes to World's Strongest Man. And I'm not going to lie, that pisses me off. So this is going to be the year where I show everybody what I'm capable of, and nothing's going to go wrong. And I'm going to be able to show everybody just what exactly the T-Rex can really do.
Actually, well, I'm knocking wood on wood for you there. But of course, you've been working with Adam Dirks. Of
Yep.
course, he's been your coach throughout this time. So I imagine within like 6 months, it's like you want to, of course, you get really strong. You want to show the world what you can do, but you really have to delay the gratification because your end goal is to, of course, perform your best at Worlds.
Right.
How is it to be like not overtraining, not peaking at the right time? Has that been challenging for you?
No, no. Adam, believe it or not, Adam is actually really good. Now that I'm in Nashville and I'm training like with him in person, Adam's very good at reeling me in. Like a lot of the lifts that you see online with heavy log or heavy deadlift or stuff like that, that's all like targeted programming. Like I'm supposed to be hitting those numbers. So I'm not, he's not having me go for 1 rep maxes. He's not having me absolutely fry my CNS. He's not pushing me to the point of exhaustion. Like a lot of my training is very, very like tame. So Adam is really good at pulling the reins in a little bit on me, so I don't go batshit crazy every time that I'm in the gym. And pretty much this entire peaking prep has been very, very positive. I'm feeling really, really good, really strong, and the best part is my conditioning is through the roof.
And I see. I've been trying to do emulate. I've been copying some of your training, and like
Oh, really?
doing some of the prowler stuff after maybe
Yep.
some exercise. I like that a lot.
Yep.
Now, in terms of, for instance, so you're talking a little bit about working with a sports psychologist, of course, for game day and listen to music. But have you started planning out your nutrition protocols for World's Strongest Man? Like, where are you going to be eating the night before? Where you going to be eating during the contest? Have you got that lined up? Or is Chef
Um,
Adam going to come through and bring
oh,
his grill?
no. Well, I've actually just started working with Nate and Peyton. So
All right.
he is my official nutritionist, and him and my food sponsor, Stacked Meals, they have been working together to essentially make sure that I'm hitting my dietary requirements every single day. Just lots and lots of steak, lots of rice, lots of green vegetables, and then maybe a little bit higher calorie meal leading up to like the night before a really heavy training session. But yeah, I would say nutrition. I've really dialed it in, and I'm feeling the best that I've ever got. I'm at 355 pounds right now, and I've got visible abs. So
Do you know
I'm
your
feeling
body weight?
good.
Do you know your body weight or your body fat percentage?
No idea.
No idea. If you had
No
to guess,
idea.
I would guess probably under 10. You look leaner than me, and I
Ooh.
was like 15 come Arnold.
I would say anywhere between 10 and 12 if I had to guess.
Mm.
That would
That's
just be a guess.
pretty lean for 350. Now I imagine so if it's the pro body coach, so he had a big speech, and of course I followed a lot of his articles and seen his videos. I imagine he's probably gonna have a lot of course, little Debbie cakes, Rice Krispies. Of course, he's big into that in the intro.
Yep.
But it'll be interesting because the World's Strongest Man, just because you do have pretty decent breaks between each events. I know you guys are doing like 3 per day. It sounds like for the prelims, and
Yep.
then of course for the finals. So it'll be interested in terms of kind of what he'll kind of have, what protocols he'll have you do
Yeah.
going into that.
Yeah. I'm interested in actually knowing that myself.
But it's probably a mixture of all three.
Yeah.
Um, but for this year, what would it mean to you to win World's Strongest Man?
It would mean so much to you, to me, and I got to be honest, dude. I win World's Strongest Man. I can guarantee you that I'm just going to break down and cry because I've put so much of this is my life. I live for strongman, and it would mean everything to me just being able to look at all of the sacrifices that I've made, look at all the stuff that I've lost, look at all the times that I lost, and look at where I've come from living in my car because I didn't have any money and like struggling just to get by, but staying on my training no matter what, to winning the world's strongest man. It would just make everything that I went through worth it. It really would. It would mean everything to me. I live for this.
That's awesome. Of course, I'm rooting for you. But it's still a question in terms of what your groups are going to be looking like. I know they're going to do a cool announcement video, come game day, or no, come April 15th, right?
Yeah.
They'll do like a little announcing. But in terms of the actual groups, if you had to choose, would there be anybody that you would want to compete with? Maybe just because they're a great competitor or a friend, or someone that you haven't competed with and you want to see how you stack up, or someone that you want to compete with because you have a bone to pick and you want to beat them right off the bat?
As far as the heats go, I'm not really concerned with who's in my heat. I'm really not, because the way that I see it, it doesn't matter who's in my heat. I'm going to do everything I can physically to get into the final. And in the final, that's where I'm going to battle it out with the top 10 in the world. So as far as who's in my heat, I'm not really bothered. I really don't care.
There's no one that you want to, like, for instance, like you beat them in the heats, you might beat them, and you might like break their season. They might not be able to get to the finals if they were someone really good. Is anybody that you want to kick out early?
I
can tell you mine if you're interested.
Yeah, let's hear it.
If I hypothetically, if I was competing this year, I would say in terms of wanting to compete, just because they're a buddy or I look up to him, I would say Kevin Farris. I would say because he's also 105 kilo, bumping up to heavyweight. When he was in the 105 kilos, I never got the chance. So I would say that he would be one. The other would probably be Brian, just because his last show, of course, he's the Brian Shaw. But if I had to, because I have a bone to pick with him and I want to beat him right there and then, it would probably, one would be Paul Dwyer, because he's the only world's strongest man, non-world strongest man winner that stiffed me for coming on my podcast. And then the other one would maybe Bobby Thompson. I would just say, for undisclosed reasons, won't say it here, but I would like to beat Bobby one day.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but is anybody like that come to mind?
Well, I would say Brian, because it's his last world's strongest man, and just being able to share the competition floor with Brian would mean a lot to me. I'm looking forward to sharing that time with him in the final. But as far as the heats go, again, man, like outside of Brian, I'm not really concerned. I don't really care who gets put in my heat.
That's a good way to look at it. So in terms of course, kind of moving on from the world's strongest man discussion, we've discussed, of course, off air, in terms of kind of wrestling, not so much WWE, but wrestling in high school and college, which is more of the folk style wrestling. Now, when you wrestled, what type of wrestler were you? Were you like a technician? Were you good on your feet? Were you good on the mat? Were you just a brute? Were you a leg rider? Were you a funk master, cradle god?
Honestly, like for being a heavyweight my entire wrestling career, I was actually a leg dog. So I would be able to break you down. Like, obviously I would do the bear hugs. I would actually shoot double legs too. And then I get you down, you get to your back. I would throw the legs in almost immediately. I knew how to use my legs.
Oh, interesting. There's not many heavyweights that rode legs. Yeah.
That's kind of why a lot of the guys were like not interested in going up against me, was just because I was able to do shit that they weren't able to.
So and double legs and then crank the half Nelson?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, man, that seems painful, especially, again, someone like you getting on top.
Well, the thing with me when I was wrestling is I was just as conditioned as the 125 guys were. So I was able to push the pace of the match literally all 3 rounds. Whereas, you watch heavyweights go, they'll go for about a minute-ish, and then they'll gas out, and then the next 2 rounds are just pretty much leaning into each other. I was able to attack you for the entire round, every single round. And that's another reason why guys didn't like going up against me, because I was just constantly going after them and pushing the pace of the match.
Well, that's of course, traits of a good wrestler. But speaking of which, so I believe wrestling is a good sport for everything, but in life, but translates also well to strongman. If any, what are your biggest takeaways from the sport of wrestling that has helped you in your strongman career?
Well, first of all, the physically obvious is learning leverages. Like you're really in tune with not only your own but other people's leverages when you start throwing around odd objects like sandbags, kegs, stones, and all of that. I would definitely say that wrestling had a great transition to that, especially when you're giving someone like a fucking German suplex on the mat. Like, that triple extension is the same thing that I use when I do stones. So just really being able to use your hips a lot and use that explosive power. But also, I would say I would say wrestling has a really big part in who I am as not only a strongman but a person. Because in wrestling, especially at my school, like we didn't do like, oh, this is their senior year, so they get to be the ones that are out there actually wrestling. It's like, no, you go out and wrestle, and whoever's the best wrestler, that's the person who takes the spot. Like if you're a senior and you're getting your shit pushed in by a freshman who's a better wrestler than you, then you're the one that's sitting on the bench. Sorry, that freshman earned it. So it taught me a lot about hard work, and it taught me a lot about nobody's going to give you shit. You got to go out and earn it.
So you guys had a big enough wrestling team that you guys were able to fill a full lineup?
Yeah, we had a full lineup for a majority. We had a hard time filling the 185 and the 215 spot at the same time. So sometimes they would pretty much just jumble back and forth. But for the most part, we had a spot filled for every other part. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I came from a small school, so we sometimes had trouble filling in some weight classes. But I would say in terms of my takeaway, I always said that determination, just because you have to be a determined individual to be in sport wrestling. Flexibility, especially in the shoulders, and ankle mobility. I would say that I think we get overlooked 100%. For ankle mobility. And then you're mobile, you're agile, you're hostile. You got to have some edge as a also, of course, mindset is an easy one. Grip. You know, all the best individuals in terms of grip also had a wrestling background. And then other individuals that had wrestling backgrounds within the sport of strongman, Martins, Kevin Ferris, Terry Rady, Tyler Young, and of course and then us two as well. But I thought the biggest thing too was, besides last thing I know, I wrote powerful hips. I was saying learning to use your hips within wrestling. Of course, higher hips always wins, and of course using your hips to be powerful, that was a big thing. But accountability, you're the only one on the mat, so if you fuck up, if you lose, you can't blame anyone besides yourself.
That was one of the biggest reasons why I didn't like team sports growing up, because I played every single sport that my school offered at least once, just to try it, see if I liked it. The only thing that I liked was wrestling, because I like you said, I like the accountability. If I go out in the mat and I lose a match, it was my fault. I wasn't conditioned enough. I wasn't technical enough. I made mistakes, and it's my job to go back into the wrestling room or back into the weight room and make sure that those mistakes don't happen again. I liked that accountability.
So you've played every sport. Did you also do like volleyball and track?
I did volleyball. I threw for track. I did football, basketball, soccer. I did everything at least once. Baseball.
Interesting. Now, if what was number 2 sport if you had to choose outside of wrestling?
Probably throwing for track, just because it was fucking easy.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
Throwing shot put. I'll get up to the circle. I'll throw a fucking shot put, and then I'll stand around for an hour. It was easy. So.
Do you remember your best throw?
Oh God, no. That was so long ago. 54 feet.
That's pretty far.
54 feet.
Yeah, you beat most of the guys in Massachusetts during my day. I only threw for 1 year, but we just did it to get ready for football. But in terms of I would say, of course, staying on the reasons on wrestling. So from a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being not needed and 10 being very needed, should strongman sumo come back to World's Strongest Man, and why?
I'm gonna cop out, and I'm gonna say 5, because I'm very divided on this. Because I think yes, it should, because I think it would be entertaining. I also would enjoy it because I'd be good at it, and I would love the opportunity to throw some of the guys around. But I'm gonna have to say no, just because guys at our size, like if we start pushing up against each other, especially if we do it in the sand, there's a lot of risk for potential injury there, man. Like a lot of blown out hamstrings, a lot of torn biceps. Like the window for injury is so high with sumo wrestling, with guys our size, with so much muscle and so much pressure on our tendons.
I agree. So I agree on the entertainment factor. Actually, I agree on, of course, most of your statement. That's why I say I was always a proponent for the lighter weight classes, just because think about it, you're already weighed in, so it's already kind of a fair battle, but also maybe not being as large. And also we needed the attention. I think it would be a very big kind of spectacle, especially with like slap boxing being pretty popular. I would think that
Yeah,
potential strongman sumo might be coming back in the fold. So
that'd be cool.
but it would be cool if they potentially were able to talk all the guys into doing it for maybe 1 year, and then it comes back every like 10 years. But is there any old time events outside of strongman sumo that you would like to see come back into the fold? I know fingers came back this year,
Yep.
Conan's wheel and stuff, but anything
You know
on?
what event I always really liked? I thought it was visually very, very cool, even from like a strongman fan, but it could also be like a mainstream fan, like a not so common fan, would be the car flip race. I always thought that was a really cool looking event. It's literally guys flipping 3 cars consecutively over on their side and then running through on the finish line. I always liked that. I thought that would be cool to see that come back.
I like the sprint at the end because
Yeah.
that was of course very cool. But yeah, well, hopefully they're listening, and hopefully is something that does come back to the fold. So of course, kind of moving on from some of the wrestling questions. So this was actually a question from my buddy Williams, just using my next podcast. But would you rather be 25% more strong or 25% more experienced if you had to choose? If like you had a blue and red pill and you had to choose one, which one would you take?
I would say at this point in my career, I would say strong.
Strong.
Yeah, because I feel like I would have enough. I feel like experience is very, very important, and I did have to think about that for a little bit because they're both very, very important. I would say with the experience that I have now, but adding 25% extra strength, I feel like that would be a given to win World's Strongest Man. But I want to put an asterisk next to my answer by saying that you can never have enough experience. So I'm definitely not discounting how important experience is.
All right. Well, William, I hope you're listening. And then you were mentioning a little bit about your kind of training into Worlds. I just kind of thought about this now. Now, how many days a week have you been putting in? You do like 3 or 4 main lifts
5
a week? 5 lifts a week.
Yep, I do 5 lifts a week. And then the other 2 days a week, I am usually using as active recovery. So I'll go into the gym and I'll work on my mobility. I'll do cardio, just moving around, stuff like that.
But you're in the gym every day in the week?
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, except of course when you're traveling and all. Now, favorite cheat meal?
Pizza, easily. I don't even need to think about that. I love me a pepperoni and bacon pizza.
And then how often? How often would you give yourself that cheat meal?
Like once a week, give or take. Depends on if I'm traveling or not. If I have access to all my food and everything like that, it might be spaced out a little bit more than that.
All right. Of course, yeah, pizza. Anything Italian is, of course, what I always say. But besides, or I would say, I'll start over this question. So, what grinds your gears besides giant meat eaters hitting the earth? But what grinds your gears in the world of strongman? So last week I had Paul Smith. We talked a little bit about like my gym owner, and even I agree. Like I think kids these days in the gym are using their phones, too much tripod set up. They're worried about the video recordings rather than putting in the work, living in the moment. But from what you've seen, anything that grinds your gears in the world of strongman?
I would say that one thing that really it will almost always elicit a response is assuming that what we do as strongmen is easy. Like whether it's discrediting our hard work with the accusation of PEDs, or it could be something like, oh man, you're so lucky to be doing what you're doing. Just comments like that always seem to really get to me because like I'm sure you're in a very similar boat. Like I've busted my fucking ass to get here. Like I've broken myself in half more times than I can count. I've injured myself. I've gone without so many times. I've done a lot for this sport, and for somebody to discredit all that hard work with one shit comment, that irritates the shit out of me. That's probably something that will always elicit a response, like not understanding how hard we actually work to do what we do.
I can see that. I've seen even potential like new individuals coming to the sport. This is throughout like the 11 years I've been doing strongman, thinking that they're going to get to, let's say, either a national, worlds, or even high level of strongman just within like 1 or 2 years. It's like, whoa. It takes guys sometimes 5 or 6, 7 or 8 years. We said earlier in the show, it took Heifer Beyonce, as good as he was, 9 trips to World's Strongest Man, right? So
Yep.
you got a lot of times you got to put in the work. So I always say when people kind of discredit the different levels of strongman,
Yeah.
just kind of, but sometimes you look at things, you look at people's successes, but you don't see what the work's put in. But I love that answer. So this is a little bit deep, but when everything is all said and done, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered as somebody who won World's Strongest Man more than once, short term, obviously. But as far as my legacy goes, I want to be remembered as not only a champion, but a good champion, somebody who represented the sport well, somebody who cared about giving back, and somebody who cared enough to try to help the sport grow. I want somebody to look back. I want at some point after my career ends, I want somebody to be out there to be able to say that Evan Singleton deserves to be on Mount Rushmore of strongman. That's what I want.
All right, excellent. Now, who's on the Mount Rushmore of strongman right now in your eyes?
Easily Brian Shaw, Zindrina Savickas, Bill Kazmaier. The fourth one always escapes me.
Singleton? Would you go that far?
What's that?
Would you do like MBM or John Paul?
They're all in contention for it. They really are. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to answer this, and I know that it's not going to be everybody's favorite response. It will probably stir the pot a little bit, but I would say Eddie Hall.
Oh, interesting.
I would say Eddie Hall, not because of what he accomplished in the sport, obviously pulling 500, winning World's Strongest Man, all of that. That's all fantastic, amazing stuff. But I would put Eddie up there because he brought so much attention to the sport and helped it grow a lot more than I think people really give him credit for. That's why I would put him up there. He helped strongman grow.
He pushed the envelope, right? He did things before his deadlift being the start, where he, of course, what was it, 55 kilos, not 55 kilos, but he broke it by 25 kilos just about, which was of course a great feat. But he made everybody kind of rise to a new level of strongman. I feel like that's usually those individuals that transcend. Sometimes those individuals are kind of competing a little bit before their time. So they're like, for instance, if he went into a different time, he would probably be right there with them. But at that time, he was pretty dominant when he wanted to be.
Well, not only his competitiveness, but if you think about back when Eddie was competing, he was entertaining as shit to watch. Yeah. He really was. He was a character. And if you look back, there haven't been very many characters in strongman, and it's the entertainment factor. I mean, for God's sakes, man, our sport came out of the circus. So you got to have a little bit of entertainment factor, in my personal opinion, just to get like a very, very like common casual viewer, get their attention. Who are you going to care most about? The guy who goes out, lifts the weight and goes backstage, the guy who goes out, lifts the weight and goes backstage, or the guy that's shouting, hooting and hollering, making a spectacle of himself, lifts the weight and then jumps into the crowd and celebrates with them? Who are you going to pay attention to?
The latter.
Exactly. So I feel like he was a really big, like, he even had his nickname, the Beast. Like, just a character like that is captivating to a lot of people and will bring a lot of attention to himself and the sport. So, like, I feel personally like he pioneered a lot of modern day characters in strongman. I really do.
I think he's probably the only strongman that has had like 3 Netflix specials at Alva, because he had Eddie Hall Strongman 1, Eddie Hall Strongman 2, Born Again, Born Strong, when he was featured with the other 3. So he's probably he's most covered, and that was at a time where I think a lot of the strongman community was kind of fiending, kind of starving for strongman content, especially at a let's just say kind of not a national level, but a mainstream level. So he really brought a lot of that attention. But I think one of his biggest things is that for those individuals that have been doubted, that have been told they can't do this. He really was a kind of a light in darkness, saying that if you doubt me, I'm just going to prove you wrong time
Yeah,
and
I mean, I'm not afraid to admit that I was one of those people. I mean, I've been told throughout my entire life that I wasn't going to be able to achieve shit and I didn't work hard enough and I was a nobody. I've been told that my whole life. So I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was one of those people watching his specials feeling that same way.
right now, even for myself, and of course kind of help drive is like, oh, well, you're moving up a weight class, Nicholas. You're not going to be as good as the heavyweights. I'm like, well, you can't count me out. Don't tell me what I can't do.
No, I've trained with you, and I see like you're obviously you're calmer than I am, but I see that intensity in you, man. You have that willingness and that determination to get stronger and better at all costs, and that's I would argue that that's the most important thing competing with the pros in the heavyweights. That's in my personal opinion. You have a wicked drive to just get better. That's a requirement. So you have it.
Thank you, Evan. Of course, I appreciate you noticing that. Well, but speaking, just having that drive, I remember when you entered the kind of the strongman scene. Of course, you won kind of your first big show back in North Carolina. That was 2016 or 2018. Now, at what point did you realize your potential in terms of strongman? Was it that contest that you won, or was it later on when you got to Worlds? But like, when did you realize that I have a shot of winning World's Strongest Man, and not many people could say I have a shot in a legit contender for World's Strongest Man? But did that click early on in your career, or did it take time?
I would say there are three defining moments for me where there's three defining moments where my mindset led to World's Strongest Man. It was 2 weeks into training. And I first discovered strongman and I started training it. 2 weeks into it, this is what I want to do. I found it. I clicked so well with this. I found what I'm meant to do. And I'm going to take this all the way to World's Strongest Man. So that's one. The second one would be my first competition in 2018 in North Carolina Strongest Man. I was competing against guys that have competed at the Arnold, Ohio, guys that have competed at World's Strongest Man, and guys that have a shit ton more experience than I do. I competed with a whole strong lineup of guys that have been doing this for a while, and I smoked them all.
It was a great lineup. I remember that.
Yeah, it was a lineup of really solid competitors, and I beat them all. My first comp. That was the second one. And then I want to say that my third one, where it really solidified in my head that I do have what it takes to win World's Strongest Man. Like, there is no more guessing. There is no more doubting. I can do this. And it was Manchester, England in 2021, the Giants Live Deadlift Championships and the World Open. I was you're probably better with the statistics and everything than I am, but I want to say that I was like the 7th person in history to deadlift 1,000 pounds in competition, somewhere around there. And then I ended up winning the entire show. And in that show, I've beaten pros who have been doing this forever. Adam Bishop, Alexei Novikov, a 2020 World's Strongest Man, Pavlo Nekonechny, Mark Felix, the list goes on. There was like 12 of us that day, and I beat them all. I beat them all in straight up head-to-head competition. I think that's what really solidified, like, now I know I can. I know I can win this title.
And that was your second international win, right? Because you won the first big one was
Giants North America.
All right.
Yes, sir.
You had all the, of course, best Americans at the time, and also was Big Laws in that lineup?
He was in 2018. Mark Felix was the one that was in 2019.
Oh, gotcha. So he was
and we had Eddie Williams from Australia too.
All right. There we go. But yeah, I remember that show. But it's funny. I'll go really back to that first contest. I remember people were telling me about yourself, and someone was like, "Yeah, he snatched the axle. He snatched a 300-pound axle." Well, I think it was a really really fast, like muscle clean and strict. But he said like he snatched it. I was like, "Whoa, I've never seen anybody snatching that type of axle." So, Evan, as you can imagine, we got a lot of like amateur, a lot of kids listen to this. And what would you tell the kids of strongman? Also, let's just say under 25 years old or someone new to the sport, what do they need to know about strongman, and what would you tell them when they're first
I,
starting out?
I would say experience is invaluable. Essentially, getting into competitions and learning where to make mistakes so that you don't make them again, and going to competitions with guys who have competed for a lot longer than you. Ask them questions, ask for advice, because 95 to 99% of the people in strongman are more than happy to help. Strongman has a lot of really good people in it, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to try to better yourself by learning from others. And somebody who's really new into the sport, I would say that another thing that's really important is don't ever let anybody convince you that you are less than capable. When I started strongman, there wasn't a lot of people that believed that I was going to make it to World's Strongest Man. They didn't see it, and they were verbal about it. They told me that I wasn't going to be able to make it anywhere because of my attitude, or because I'm too headstrong, or anything like that. It's crucial that you don't let those voices like stay in your head, like in one ear and out the other. Ignore that shit. That shit's irrelevant. And the people who say shit like that, chances are, have never accomplished anything in their lives. So they're just taking their failures out on you.
Awesome. It's great advice from the T-Rex himself. So you're talking a little bit about trying different things. You gotta, as a strongman, you gotta grow in order to be, of course, very proficient, to be elite in this world. But what are some examples of yourself, even like going beyond your comfort zone, so pushing your own comfort zone levels? Like what have you done in your career to really make yourself uncomfortable with it, or get comfortable with the uncomfortable?
Fair enough. One thing in strongman that a lot of people will preach, and it's because they preach it for an obvious reason. It's true. Is you need to train your weaknesses. When I first started strongman, I had a terrible deadlift. When I first started strongman, I had a 600-pound max deadlift, and that was complete with like the arched back, the hitching, the awful like lockout. It was terrible. And the other thing that I was really bad at, I just couldn't get the groove at, was stones. And those were terrible, terrible events for me. And now I'm always first or second in a stone run, and I'm pulling over 1,000 pounds. So what you need to do if you want to make your weaknesses better is you need to work on them. You need to put a lot of effort into them. There's plenty of guys I know who are really, really good at overhead press, and they have a shit deadlift. But every time that they go into the gym, all they want to train is overhead press because they're good at it. That's not what needs work. Your deadlift is what needs work. So you need to work on your deadlift. It's really simple, man. A lot of people try to overcomplicate this shit. And at the end of the day, if you're not good at something, you need to do it until you're good at it. Simple as that.
That's fair. People might say that all I do is overhead lift, but all I post is overhead lifting. That's yeah. But it's funny. I actually was listening to Trey a little bit today when he was talking to Brian. He says, like, if I don't think it's impressive, other people are not going to find it impressive, so I'm not going to post it.
Yep.
So I thought that funny, but pretty common to what I have. So after Worlds, what else do you have planned for the rest of the year?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting back into the Giant shows. My first show after Worlds is going to be the Royal Albert Hall, the Strongman Classic by Giants Live. That's going to be in London in July 8th, I believe. That's my first competition. And then I'm pretty much doing every Giant show for the rest of the year. I love going overseas and competing with them. I love the Giants people. They're very, very good friends of mine. I'm also really, really looking forward to the Shaw Classic. We recently got the events and the lineup for that. The events are looking really good for me. It'll be Brian Shaw's last show ever, which I'm truly humbled and honored to be a part of. I truly feel like that's a big part of history, and to just have a small part of that is absolutely humbling. And lastly, I'm really, really hoping that my invitation from last year to the Rogue Invitational carries over, because that's a show that I really, really want to do.
That'll be great events if they keep it similar for you. So
Yeah.
that'll be really exciting. Evan, so the Giants Live show, so maybe we'll see you doing the another max pull for the because I think they're doing that again, and then maybe the max log, maybe potential max log, right? I think they had plans to do that too.
Potentially.
Yeah. So it'd be fun to see if you're pushing that American record. And then in terms of Brian's show, it would be interesting with the max. What is it? Or is it max chest press or bench press?
It'll be for reps.
For reps. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's also a pretty interesting one, but a reason for people to start doing benching again. And then do you have any big? And then for the rest of the year, do you have any big plans outside of Strongman? For yourself, either the businesses. I know you've been ramping up the YouTube. Of course, watch your stretching YouTube. I watch a lot of them. Me and the girl, we watch all your YouTube.
Oh, the winner.
Yeah, so she enjoys it well. But yeah, how do you like it? I know you've been ramping up on the YouTube. How do you like the YouTube world?
I like it. It's a really good way to put a little bit more of my personality out there as opposed to like on Instagram. It's pretty much just focused solely on my lifting, and like it's that super angry and intense stuff. The YouTube is a really good way for me to kind of show a little bit more of a spotlight on my personality, just to show myself a little bit in a different light that maybe some people haven't really gotten a chance to see. So that's always really nice. And then just filming a bunch of fun stuff. Like I've got a lot of ideas for YouTube videos and content yet to come. And yeah, it's going to be a good time.
All right, excellent. Well, I'll be looking forward to that. And then I'll put Evan's YouTube description below, also his socials. But those are all my questions for today, Evan. Of course, I do appreciate coming on. Of course, yeah, we pounded through 20, so of course you did a really good job.
I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, but we'll end the show with this, Evan. So after you win World's Strongest Man, what's the first thing you're gonna do?
After all the crying is done.
Like we take some time off, we take a trip, you go to Disneyland, eat a pizza.
Oh, well, hell yeah. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to order me a fat, greasy pizza to my hotel room. I'm going to house all of it. That's definitely on the docket. That's definitely going to happen. Honestly, when I win World's Strongest Man, I would really love to plan a trip at some point to Hawaii.
Cool.
I've never been to Hawaii. I've heard it's beautiful, and the island of Kauai is actually on my bucket list because that's where they filmed the first Jurassic Park.
Oh, well, there you go. So you're going back to your roots.
Yeah, I'm going back home.
Awesome. But Evan, thank you for coming on, and for everybody else, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, and all. Follow Evan's channel, follow him on Instagram, and until next time, everybody, stay strong.